She thought her husband was traveling for a business conference, but he was secretly marrying her best friend. In one shocking moment, betrayal was revealed before an entire village. Her husband, her best friend, and a secret child. When love turns to lies and friendship becomes betrayal, only one truth remains: nemesis will strike. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more intriguing stories. The morning sun in Lagos spilled its golden light across the modest duplex that Nkem and Obinna shared. The compound smelled faintly of rain from the night before, and the chirping of restless birds mingled with the sound of vehicles honking along the busy road nearby. Inside, the house was alive with soft movements. Nkem knelt by the bed, carefully folding Obinna's clothes into a small, sleek black suitcase. She had already ironed his white shirts the night before, polishing his shoes until they shone. Every detail mattered to her because Obinna's success was her success. Obinna leaned casually against the doorframe, his tall frame silhouetted against the soft morning light. He wore a sky-blue caftan, freshly starched, and on his wrist glistened a gold watch, one of his prized possessions. His neatly trimmed beard framed a smile that seemed both charming and calculating. "My love," he said softly, walking over to her. He placed a hand on her shoulder and bent down to kiss her forehead. "You are the reason I can go out there and face the world." "Thank you." And Kim smiled, her eyes glowing with warmth. She adjusted his collar like she always did, fussing over him in that wifely way that made her feel useful. "Don't worry, Obim," she replied, using his pet name. "This deal will change our lives. I believe in you." Obinna nodded, his lips curving into that disarming smile that could melt even the most suspicious heart. "It will. In fact, once I return, things will not remain the same. You'll see." Her chest swelled with pride. For the last 5 years, she had stood firmly by this man. She had been there when he lost his job, when he couldn't afford rent, when he felt less of a man. She had carried the family on her shoulders, working long hours at the bank, saving every kobo, never complaining. To her, his rise was overdue, and she prayed for it fervently. But unknown to Nkem, the conference Obinna claimed to be attending in Abuja was nothing but a fabrication, a web of lies carefully spun. His true destination was Imo State, where a different kind of gathering awaited him, his secret traditional marriage to another woman. Obinna zipped up his suitcase and placed it by the door. "I'll be gone for just 3 days. Don't miss me too much." Nkem chuckled, shaking her head. 3 days is nothing. Just make sure you focus and come back with good news." He gave her another kiss, and then, with an air of confidence, strode out of the house. Nkem stood at the doorway, watching him load his bag into a waiting taxi. As the vehicle pulled away, she whispered a small prayer, her heart swelling with trust and devotion. If only she knew. Life for Nkem during Obinna's absence was as routine as ever. She woke early, dressed neatly in her navy blue bank uniform, tied her natural hair into a bun, and headed to work. But lately, something else had been troubling her, not about Obinna, but about Amara, her best friend. Amara had been her sister in all but blood since their university days. They had shared hostel rooms, borrowed each other's clothes, comforted each other during heartbreaks, and celebrated each other's wins. When Nkem got married, Amara was her maid of honor. They were inseparable, or at least they had been. In recent months, Amara had grown strangely distant. She ignored Kim's late-night calls, replied to her messages with vague one-liners, and made excuses whenever Kim suggested meeting up. At first, Kim thought it was work stress. Amara had mentioned getting involved in some business ventures. Still, a small unease lingered at the back of Kim's mind, though she quickly brushed it aside. After all, a best friend was a best friend. The revelation came unexpectedly, like a crack of thunder on a sunny day. One Friday afternoon, Kim received a call from her cousin Kioma, who lived in their hometown in Imo State. "Kim," Kioma said excitedly, "are you coming home for the big wedding tomorrow?" "Wedding? Which wedding?" Kim asked, frowning as she adjusted the files on her office desk. Kioma laughed lightly. "Don't tell me Amara didn't invite you. Everyone in the village is talking about it. It's supposed to be grand, Amara's traditional marriage." Kim's pen slipped from her fingers. "What did you just say? Amara's what?" "Her traditional marriage," Kioma repeated, oblivious to the storm she had just unleashed. "The compound is already decorated. People are arriving. You mean she didn't tell you?" The words sank like heavy stones in Kim's chest. Amara, her best friend, her sister, was getting married. And she hadn't said a word, not even a hint? For a moment, Kim laughed nervously, trying to convince herself it was a mix-up. No. Maybe it's another Amara. There are many Amaras. But Kioma was certain. "It's your friend Amara from university. I even saw her yesterday at the village square. She looked so happy buying wrappers and jewelry. I thought you would be there already." When the call ended, Kim sat frozen in her chair. Her mind spun wildly. How could Amara hide such a monumental event from her? Hadn't they promised to always be there for each other's milestones? The questions burned, but no answers came. That night, Kim lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan whirling lazily above her. Memories of her friendship with Amara flashed before her eyes. Their late-night laughter in school, the secrets they shared, the bond that felt unbreakable. A bitter taste filled her mouth. "Why, Amara?" she whispered to the empty room. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her heart wrestled between hurt and loyalty. Maybe Amara had her reasons. Maybe it was a rushed arrangement. Maybe she had simply been too busy. But still, not even a phone call? By morning, Kim made up her mind. She couldn't just sit in Lagos while her best friend tied the knot in the village. She would go, unannounced, and surprise her. Surely Amara would be delighted to see her, maybe even embarrassed for keeping it a secret. Either way, Kim would be there. On Saturday morning, Kim dressed in her finest blue Ankara gown, its pattern swirling with elegance. She tied a matching headscarf, slipped on her gold earrings, and wore the bracelet Amara had gifted her years ago. If she was going to surprise her friend, she would do it with pride and love. She packed a box of gifts, wrappers, perfume, and an envelope of cash, all carefully chosen. Carrying the bag felt heavy, not just in weight, but in the significance of the gesture. It was proof of her loyalty, proof that no distance or silence could break their bond. At the motor park, she boarded a bus bound for Imo State. The journey was long, with endless stretches of highway, villages flashing by, and the chatter of passengers filling the air. But Kim barely noticed. Her mind was consumed with thoughts of Amara. She imagined the look on her best friend's face when she appeared unexpectedly at the wedding. She pictured Amara squealing with joy, hugging her tightly, maybe even shedding tears of happiness. That image warmed her heart, soothing the sting of secrecy. Little did Kim know that the surprise awaiting her was not the joyous reunion she anticipated, but a betrayal so deep it would shatter her very soul. And so, with her bag of gifts clutched close and her heart full of hope, Kim rode toward her destiny, unaware that every mile brought her closer to the greatest heartbreak of her life. The web of lies had been spun, and she was about to walk right into its center. The village square in Emo's state was alive with celebration. Red canopies stretched across the compound, their fabric fluttering lightly under the warm afternoon breeze. Women, dressed in shimmering wrappers and lace blouses, moved in rhythm as the drums pounded, their anklets jingling with each step. Men sipped palm wine in calabashes. Elders sat proudly in carved wooden chairs, and the smell of roasted goat meat and jollof rice filled the air. It was the kind of scene Kim loved. Village festivities, laughter, the beauty of tradition. As she stepped out of the bus and made her way through the dusty road leading to Amara's family compound, her heart brimmed with excitement. Her blue Ankara gown hugged her slender frame gracefully, and the gifts she carried, carefully wrapped in a large raffia basket, swayed with each step. She imagined Amara's shock and laughter when she appeared unannounced. "Ah, Kim, you didn't even tell me you were coming," Amara would exclaim, hugging her tightly, and Kim would scold her playfully. "So you wanted to hide your marriage from me, eh? See me here now." That was the picture in her mind, but reality had a crueler script. As she reached the compound, music blared louder. She paused at the gate, adjusting her headscarf, preparing herself for the surprise entrance. But then her eyes caught something so jarring that her smile froze instantly. At the entrance stood a huge white banner. Bold red letters declared Traditional Marriage Ceremony of Amara and Chief Obinna. Kim's eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat. And there, on the banner, was the smiling face of her husband, Obinna, dressed in regal Igbo attire, a red cap on his head, his hand proudly holding Amara's. The basket of gifts slipped from Kim's grasp and crashed onto the dusty ground. Her knees buckled, and she stumbled forward, clutching her chest as if to stop her heart from tearing apart. "No, no, this cannot be," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Not Obinna, not Amara." Guests standing near the gate turned to look. Murmurs began to ripple through the crowd like waves across water. "Isn't that Kim from Lagos? Obinna's wife?" someone whispered. "Jesus Christ, she has come!" another hissed, covering her mouth. "Chineke, the first wife has arrived." The compound that had moments ago been bubbling with celebration suddenly felt tense. Curious eyes darted toward her. Some people gasped in pity. Others leaned closer to catch the unfolding scandal, but Kim was deaf to their whispers. Her world spun. She staggered past the gate, forcing her way into the compound, her eyes fixed on the raised platform where the bride and groom sat. And there they were, Obinna and Amara, side by side on the marriage throne. Amara glowed like a goddess, her skin oiled to perfection, her body draped in a shimmering George wrapper embroidered with golden beads. Coral beads lined her neck, wrists, and ankles, clinking softly as she moved. Her dimples deepened as she smiled at the elders, accepting kola nut blessings. Beside her, Obinna sat tall and proud, his red cap tilted slightly, his white traditional shirt adorned with lion head patterns. He held a fly whisk in his right hand, nodding proudly at every elder who hailed him. His smile was wide, confident, and utterly betraying. The sight was a dagger in Kim's heart. Her chest tightened and tears blurred her vision. Rage and sorrow exploded inside her, and before she knew it, her voice tore through the air like thunder. "Obinna! Amara! What is this?" The drum stopped. The dancers froze. Silence swallowed the compound. All eyes turned to her, the abandoned wife, the uninvited guest, the ghost of the life Obinna had tried to bury. Amara's smile faltered. For the first time that day, her dimples disappeared, replaced by panic. But quickly, she steadied herself. She reached for Obinna's hand under the table, clutching it tightly as if daring him to betray her now. Obinna's face drained of color. He shifted uncomfortably, his lips twitching as though searching for words. But none came. And then came a voice, sharp and commanding. It was Mama Obinna, rising from her chair like a lioness guarding her cub. She tied her wrapper tighter around her broad waist and walked forward, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Nkim!" she barked. "This marriage must happen. Do you hear me? It must happen." Gasps filled the air. Nkim's mouth fell open. "Mama, you knew?" she whispered, shaking. Mama Obinna stood tall, her tribal marks deepening as her expression hardened. "Yes, I knew. Do you think I would let my son's lineage die because of you? For years you have been in that house, yet you could not give him a son. A woman who cannot give my family an heir is no wife." Her words struck like a whip across Nkim's face. Tears welled in her eyes, but her voice rose, sharp with anguish. "I gave your son everything. When he lost his job, who fed him? Who paid the rent? Who clothed him? Who believed in him when no one else did? And this is how you repay me? By handing him to my best friend?" The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some shook their heads in pity. Others whispered in disgust. The shame was spreading, engulfing the ceremony. And Kim turned her tear-streaked face toward Obinna, her voice cracking. "Obinna, tell me this is not true. Tell me this is some wicked joke." Obinna lowered his gaze. His lips parted, but before he could speak, Mama Obinna's voice boomed again, silence in him. "This woman," she pointed at Amara, "has already given our son a male child. Something you and Kim have failed to do. That is why this marriage must go on." The words hung heavy in the air, sucking the life from Nkim's soul. Her knees threatened to give way completely. She felt as though the ground itself was collapsing beneath her feet. Her best friend, her husband, and now a child she never knew existed. It was betrayal in its purest, cruelest form. Amara, emboldened by Mama Obinna's declaration, straightened her shoulders and tightened her grip on Obinna's hand. Though her smile trembled faintly, her eyes glistened with triumph. "Forgive me, Nkim," she said, her voice laced with mock pity. "But love cannot be forced. Obinna belongs with me now. You must accept your fate." Nkim's lips quivered as fresh tears poured down her cheeks. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, each breath a struggle. She wanted to scream, to collapse, to vanish. But instead, she stood trembling, staring at the two people she had loved most, now seated together as bride and groom. The compound buzzed with tension. Elders exchanged worried glances. Guests whispered feverishly. Children, sensing the unease, clung to their mothers' wrappers. The ceremony that had begun with drums and laughter now sat on the edge of chaos. Nkim finally let out a wail so piercing that even the birds perched on nearby trees scattered. "God, what have I done to deserve this?" she cried, tearing at her wrapper in anguish. Her voice echoed through the compound, drowning the silence, leaving behind only the heavy thud of a heart breaking in public view. And as she stood there, broken and betrayed, one truth settled in her mind like poison. Her husband had not just lied. He had stolen her best friend, fathered a secret son, and shattered her world before an entire village. The shattered surprise was complete. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some guests turned away, unable to meet her eyes. Others shook their heads, whispering about betrayal, about the wickedness of men and the treachery of friends. Obina's face tightened. He looked away, unable to hold her gaze, shame flickering across his features. But then he drew in a breath, his voice low, almost pleading. "And Kim, you don't understand. It's not like that. Mama insisted. She said I must have a son for the lineage. You couldn't give me one." The words slipped from his mouth like venom. The compound erupted with gasps. Some women hissed in outrage, while men muttered disapprovingly. Before Obina could finish, Nkem's palm cracked across his cheek with a sharp, ringing slap that echoed louder than the drums had earlier. The crowd gasped collectively. Even the elders jerked in shock. Obina staggered slightly, his hand flying to his face, his eyes wide. Nkem's tears streamed unchecked, her voice rising, hoarse with grief and fury. "You dare blame me for your wickedness? You dare put the fault of your deceit on my womb? Do you know how many nights I cried myself to sleep, praying for a child? Do you know how many times I begged God to bless us? And instead of standing by me, you chose betrayal." Her chest heaved as she turned her burning gaze to Amara, her so-called sister. "And you," she screamed, her voice breaking, "you! I called you sister. I opened my home to you. I shared my secrets, my fears, my pain. I trusted you with everything, and you were sleeping with my husband behind my back?" Her cry was so raw that even hardened elders shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some women covered their mouths, murmuring, "Chai, this is abomination." But Amara, draped in her golden George wrapper, her coral beads clinking softly as she moved, lifted her chin proudly. Her voice was cold, slicing through the air like a blade. "Love is not pity, Nkem. You were only holding him down. Obina deserves better than a barren wife who can't give him what he needs." The words fell like stones into the silence. Gasps erupted again. Some women hissed audibly. An old man shook his head, muttering, "Tufiakwa! May the gods forbid such wickedness." Nkem staggered backward, clutching her chest as if Amara had stabbed her with a knife. Her voice trembled as she let out a bitter laugh. "So, this is your truth, Amara? This is the sisterhood you preached about? You think love is betrayal? You think better means snatching another woman's husband? May you never know peace." Her wail rose to the heavens as she tore at her wrapper, yanking it off her shoulders in anguish. Her hair loosened, falling wildly around her face. She collapsed to her knees in the dust, raising her arms skyward as if summoning the heavens to witness her pain. The elders rushed to calm her. "Daughter, rise. Do not disgrace yourself further," one said, reaching to pull her up. But Nkem pulled away, her voice rising with the weight of a curse. "Before all of you here I speak. This union, this abomination, will never know peace. The tears you caused me will haunt you both. Your laughter will turn to ashes. Your bed will be fire. Your child will carry the burden of your sins. Mark my words, the same betrayal you gave me will be your downfall." Her words rang out like thunder, silencing even the murmurs of the crowd. The atmosphere shifted, heavy and tense, as if the air itself bowed under the weight of her curse. Some guests gasped and stepped back, afraid to be caught in the fire of her words. Others clapped their hands together in pity, lamenting how far betrayal had gone in this generation. "Chineke!" a woman exclaimed, her voice full of sorrow. "To betray both wife and friend like this, it is a curse already." Children clung to their mothers' wrappers, sensing the dark energy swirling around the compound. Even the drummers, who had set down their sticks earlier, stared wide-eyed, too shaken to resume their beats. Obinna tried to rise, his voice shaky, desperate. "Nkem, stop this madness. Enough already! Don't bring curses into this!" But his plea only fueled her rage. She shot him a glare so sharp it cut through him. "Madness?" she hissed. "You call my pain madness? You, Obinna, will taste the bitterness of betrayal with your own tongue. Just as you mocked my tears, so shall the world mock yours." Her words hung in the air, sharp and final. The once celebratory atmosphere was shattered. Guests whispered feverishly. Some began quietly leaving the compound, muttering about shame and disgrace. Plates of food remained untouched. The palm wine calabashes sat forgotten. The village women shook their heads in disappointment, whispering, "This marriage will never prosper." The gods do not smile on abomination. The elders exchanged worried glances. They knew the weight of a wife's curse carried power, especially one born from the depths of betrayal. Amara, though visibly shaken, tightened her grip on Obinna's arm and tried to salvage pride. "Ignore her," she hissed through clenched teeth. "She is nothing now. I am the one here beside you." But Obinna's face betrayed his unease. His eyes flickered nervously across the crowd, where judgmental stares pierced through him. For the first time that day, doubt crept into his heart. Nkem, her tears soaking her cheeks, rose shakily to her feet. Her wrapper hung loosely from her body, dust clinging to her knees. She looked around the compound, her gaze sweeping across the witnesses of her humiliation. "You all saw it," she declared, her voice breaking but firm. "You all are witnesses. When their laughter turns to wailing, remember this day." And with that, she turned, leaving her basket of gifts abandoned at the entrance, a symbol of trust shattered beyond repair. The crowd parted for her as she walked away, some averting their eyes, others nodding in sympathy. The whispers followed her like shadows. "Chai, poor woman. She suffered for him, and this is her reward? The gods will judge." Behind her, the drums never resumed, the feast never continued. What was meant to be a celebration had turned into a spectacle of shame. The clash of truths had erupted, and nothing would ever be the same again. The drums of the wedding celebration had long fallen silent, replaced by whispers that echoed from compound to compound, village to village, until they reached the bustling streets of Lagos. What was meant to be a joyous union had turned into a scandal that refused to die. Every tongue carried the tale. The man married his wife's best friend in broad daylight, and the first wife cursed them before the elders. In Lagos, Obinna's name, once associated with ambition and promise, now carried a stench of deceit. Business partners who had been preparing contracts worth millions suddenly pulled out, unwilling to attach their reputations to a man whose home was drenched in disgrace. His phone, once alive with calls and opportunities, grew silent. Emails went unanswered. Meetings were canceled. Obinna returned to Lagos with Amara beside him, her head held high in defiance, her waist tied in fine wrappers, her neck adorned with coral beads. She moved into the house that Nkem had once tenderly built into a home. Without hesitation, Amara removed Nkem's framed pictures from the walls, packed her clothes into black bags, and replaced them with her own perfume, makeup, and jewelry. "Now, I am the rightful queen here," she boasted, pacing the living room, her eyes glittering with triumph. Obinna forced a smile, but behind it was unease. He could still see Nkem's tear-streaked face, hear her trembling voice cursing his name before the elders. That image haunted him in the silence of night. Yet pride would not let him admit regret. Not yet. Barely 2 months into their new life together, the dream began to unravel. The supposed treasure of the union, the little boy that Amara had presented as the lineage's salvation, fell ill with a persistent cough. What began as a simple fever soon became a recurring nightmare. The child was in and out of hospitals, swallowing syrups, taking injections, his tiny chest rattling with weakness. Hospital bills piled higher than Obinna's unpaid debts. Each trip to the clinic drained his pockets, and with his contracts canceled, there was no steady income to replace what was spent. Amara, once glowing with the pride of victory, began to snap under the weight of worry. She removed her beads and wrappers, traded them for old gowns, her hair untidy as she paced hospital corridors with her sick child. The villagers who had once envied her whispered now, "Is this the woman who snatched her friend's husband? See how beauty fades when peace is missing." Obinna, once the confident chief, was reduced to borrowing money from former colleagues, only to be met with rejection. "Obinna, your name is everywhere for the wrong reasons," one told him bluntly. "I can't tie my fortune to yours any more." At home, arguments replaced affection. "Where is the money for his drugs?" Amara would scream, her voice shrill with frustration. "Do you think money falls from the sky?" Obinna barked back, his shirt soaked with sweat from chasing failed deals. They quarreled deep into the night, their child coughing in the background, his small voice crying out for peace neither parent could give. While Obinna and Amara drowned in chaos, Nkem was quietly rebuilding her shattered world. At first, the betrayal nearly destroyed her. She would lie on her bed in the small apartment she rented after leaving the duplex, staring at the ceiling with swollen eyes. Nights were long, mornings heavier. The questions haunted her. Why me? Why did the two people I trusted most betray me? But grief, like fire, eventually burned into strength. She threw herself into her work with renewed determination. Colleagues noticed how she carried herself, still gentle, but with a new steel in her spine. When a scholarship opportunity for a master's program arose, she applied without hesitation and was selected. Soon, her weekends were spent in lecture halls, books spread before her, her mind absorbing knowledge like dry soil drinking rain. She no longer avoided mirrors. Instead, she stood before them, wrapped in clean suits, her natural hair styled into regal crowns. With each passing day, she reclaimed the dignity stolen from her. Her neighbors admired her resilience. Women whispered, "That is a strong woman. Look how she rises despite the storm." One evening, as she walked into her office building in Victoria Island, the sun catching the edges of her crisp navy blue suit, even her boss paused. "Nkem, you are glowing," he remarked. She only smiled, her heart still scarred but no longer broken. Back in his once proud home, Obinna was a shadow. The man who had once boasted about changing their lives sat now in dingy bars, drowning in bottles of cheap beer. His beard was unkempt, his once broad shoulders slumped. The friends who had once cheered him on avoided his calls. One night, as he staggered out of a bar, he collapsed by the roadside. No one rushed to help. Only pitying glances followed him as he dragged himself up, dust clinging to his torn trousers. At home, Amara was no longer the glowing bride, but a bitter woman, her face lined with stress. She shouted daily, demanding money for food, for medicine, for clothes. When Obinna brought nothing, she spat words sharper than knives. You left gold for stone. Look at you now, a disgrace. Was it not your wife who held you up when you were nothing? Now you've destroyed yourself because of me. Her words stung, but Obinna had no strength left to fight. He would only sit silently, watching his sick child cough endlessly, the sound a cruel reminder of the curse Nkim had poured upon them. At times, in his drunken haze, Obinna whispered to himself, I lost everything because of greed and lies. The final scenes of their lives played out like the slow collapse of a crumbling building. Obinna, once a man of ambition, became a cautionary tale, his name mentioned only in hushed tones of pity. Amara, stripped of beauty and pride, realized too late that what begins in betrayal seldom ends in joy. Their child, innocent in the midst of chaos, bore the weight of their sins, his fragile health a reminder that foundations built on lies cannot stand. And in Kim, she became the quiet triumph of the story. Though her heart carried scars, her dignity shone brighter than ever. She walked with her head high, her life proof that betrayal does not end a woman. It forges her anew. As the story closed, her voice echoed in the minds of all who heard. When betrayal comes from those you trust most, it cuts deepest. But sometimes, pain is the fire that forges strength.